Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot interview series. Today we're joined by one of the most controversial wrestlers of all time, Eddy Mansfield, the Continental Lover. Thanks for being here with us today.
Hey, anytime, but man, it's my honor.
And there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about today. Obviously, back in 1984, you're known for going on 2020 and I guess, quote-unquote, exposing the business.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that. My very first question to you would be how you got started in the wrestling business and were you a fan growing up?
Yeah, I was a fan growing up. I think every one of the wrestlers that are in the business are fans. And when you say fans, they literally like the different characters. They fall in love with a character. And that's the key to the whole business. The guy who broke me in the business was Leon Ogle. And I started in 1977, which made me, and I was very fortunate. I had a lot of talent. And Leon spotted that in me, and he was the son-in-law of Fred Ward, which will tie into a hell of a story later on during this as we go along. 1977, I was Rookie of the Year of the NWA, and also 1978, I was two-time Rookie of the Year. Only in wrestling can this happen.
So basically, you're a fan of the business, and it's something that you knew you wanted to get into.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you broke into the business. How did you find somebody to train you and all that? How did that come?
Well, what happened was I literally, myself and another guy really kind of trained ourselves. And once I got to Leon kind of took me through the steps and kind of really broke me in the way that needed to be broken in. And I always asked Leon, I said, do I have the talent to do what needs to be done to do something in professional wrestling? He says, you have more than enough. You know, I played 2 years of pro baseball. I was signed by Leo Mazzoni. And then when my arm went out, I needed to find something else to do. And so pro wrestling was kind of really an odd fit, but I really enjoyed doing it. And I was a good athlete, so I went into professional wrestling. And through Leon, I was able to do that.
Did he smarten you up to the business right away, or did he tell you on a need-to-know basis?
It wasn't so much smarten up as it was see if I could take the abuse. And when you look at the abuse that you do take as a professional wrestler, it's a lot. And, you know, it's like when I was doing the 2020 piece, they wanted to use the word fake. And I have a real problem with fake. I mean, because when I wake up every morning, what I feel in my bones and my body is not fake. And when you get suplexed off the top rope, or you get slammed, or you do a belly to back suplex, there's nothing fake about that, and it hurt you. Predetermined was a better word to use. Yes, it's predetermined. That's not a problem, but fake is a real problem, and that's where they ran into the problem. They didn't listen to me, you know, early on in the game. And, you know, I knew that I could take the punishment because I did. And I was one of the best bump men in the business.
Was the training more difficult than you thought?
God, I had gone through, when I started training, man, I trained on mats. I was never in a ring until right at the end when Leon got me in, excuse me. I've been training with two other guys. One was Leo, one was Ed. That's where Leo came in, not Leon. But we were working out on mats, gym mats at the YMCA. And you know how hard bumps are when that happens.
Without a doubt. Now, for you, what was harder for you to pick up? Learning how to bump or the psychology of the business?
Bumping came natural to me. I just loved to take bumps. And, you know, right, Ray Stevens and myself were good buddies later on in my career. But bumps came natural to me. The psychology, I sat and watched great workers. And when I say great workers, I'm talking about Dory Funk, Terry Funk. I'm talking about Jody Hamilton, and other guys and Jerry Jack Briscoe, Wahoo McDaniel. Those were my kind of mentors that meant the world to me and still are to this day, the ones that haven't passed on. And they're the ones that painted the picture. What's missing in professional wrestling today is the beginning, the middle, and the end. Everybody wants to take all these goofy bumps, but they don't mean anything. Bottom line is, you know, you're a good guy or you're a bad guy. Stick to being a good guy if you're a good guy. Be a heel if you're going to be a heel, and don't worry about the rest. Get in that ring, entertain the people, and we used to call everything in the ring. Today, they make up all this crap in the locker room, and it just blows my mind that because in different towns and in different areas, you had to wrestle according to what the people would buy. It wasn't like saying, okay, tonight in St. Louis, Missouri, I'm going to just do this match because this is the moves I want to do. No, it's not that way. St. Louis wanted to see wrestling along with high spots and moving a little furniture. So you had to adjust your style depending on where you were. Los Angeles, things were wide open. Okay, they were used to seeing a lot of violence. So that's what you give them. You give them high spots, a lot of high flying, a lot of blood, a lot of furniture moving. Furniture moving is called hardcore. We were moving furniture way before the terminology hardcore ever came in existence. And then when you look at different towns, that's the key of the way you worked. It dictated what went on in the ring. The finish was the finish. You knew that going in. But what you did in between the beginning of the match and to the finish was what made you a star or made you a jabroni.
For you, I guess, what was the hardest thing for you to break into the business?
Was it hard for me to break into business?
Right.
It wasn't hard for me to break into business.
No, I mean, what was the hardest thing about breaking into the business back then for you?
Oh, the shock of the money.
Okay.
The shock of the money, and that was a real shock, because what I had a real problem with, and I still do today, is wrestling fans think because you're on TV. This is called the myth. Let me explain the myth. The myth is where you're on TV. Everybody thinks that you're rich and famous because they see you on TV each and every week. Well, in every other profession, that's the truth. But it's like I said before, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but Abraham Lincoln forgot to free the pro wrestlers. So I had to take it upon myself when they screwed me to free the pro wrestlers. And that's what I did when I did 2020. I freed professional wrestlers to be able to make the money that they're making today. And I'm very proud of it. And you know something? Every guy that you meet, I don't care who it is, that signed an autograph from you, have done anything for you in professional wrestling, has sat in a locker room or driven in a car or sat on a plane and bitched and moaned about the way he's being treated. Well, when they blackballed me, I had told them if this happened, I was going to do something about it. So what I did is I shined the light on the big two fat rats in the junkyard, and they had to start paying professional wrestlers. And now that's why you see the guys making the money they're making today. It's because of me. I look at myself as more like the Kurt Flood of professional wrestling. And I'm very proud of that. You know, you take a guy's, it's like I was at one of these fan fests, and you know, the audience were asking questions, and I said to them, I said, all you people sitting out here, think about this. What if one day you've done a great job for 10, 15 years, one day somebody walks into your job and says to you, guess what? You're fired. You'll never work again because I do not like you. Now, what would you do? When you're sitting there and you've worked as hard as you had and you've given your life and your blood, sweat, and tears and been stabbed and been whatever to this company, just because one asshole doesn't like you, they take your livelihood away from you. So what happens then? What would you do? Would you sit there and take it? Would you be a mouse or would you be a man? Well, I chose to be a man, not the mouse.
Some of your early memories, we're going to get into all of 2020 and the Ole Anderson stuff coming up without a doubt. What are your memories of your first match?
Oh, my first match. You're going to love this. You know, Rob, my first match was this. It was down at Channel 4 down at Dothan, Alabama. And my first match, I was a babyface. And that was about the last match I was a babyface. It lasted 10 seconds. I did a crisscross with Charlie Fulton. And he was going as one of the Raging Cajuns at the time. I did a crisscross, put him to sleep, pinned him 1, 2, 3, and then went down to do an interview. Supposed to be being kind of mentored by Ken Lucas and all that. And I was so blown up, believe it or not, I could hardly do the interview. That's how nervous and scared I was.
I was going to ask you, who were the vets that mentored you early on?
Oh my goodness! I can name the vets that really mentored me: Wahoo McDaniel, Jody Hamilton, Dory and Terry Funk, Jack and Jerry Briscoe. Those are my guys, and they are to this day. Some of the greatest minds in the history of this business, bar none, inside the ring and outside the ring. And I have, and another guy I want to say that meant the world to me. And also, he gave me so much follow advice, and he mentored me too. And I left him out, and please forgive me for doing this. It's Sheik, the original Sheik, Eddie Farhat. He meant so much to me as a friend, and he gave me, when I went into business, I was 19 years old. I was one of the youngest guys ever to enter professional wrestling at that time. And he gave me so much fatherly advice and taught me. He says, watch these guys, Ed. They'll try to screw with you and they'll try to do this. And he gave me the advice and to help me become a star when I needed to be. And the Sheik, Eddie Farhat, is one of the greatest human beings that ever walked the face of this earth. He was a great draw. And, when I see the NWA today had this guy called the Sheik, I want to piss on him. Because, if he's not endorsed by the Farhat family, it's you're just stealing the guy's gimmick. And that's where I have a problem. If you can't be original, don't be it. But when you look at the Sheik and the guys that I described from Jody Hamilton to the Funks to the Briscoes, my goodness gracious, if you can't learn something from them, you can't learn from anyone.
Did any of the vets test you early on in the ring, try to stretch you or anything?
No, really. I had one guy. That was down in Pensacola when I was working with the Fullers. I had a hurt knee, and this guy named Rip Tyler, big fat old guy, should have already been retired. He tried to do a leg dive on me on my bad leg. And so Tony Charles, he was a British guy, and he was a friend of mine. We'd worked a lot of angles together. He goes, Eddie, tag me. So I tagged him, and boom, Tony Charles hit that ring and just double leg dive his little fat ass and went under and stretched him. He said, don't you ever try that with a guy, especially when he's hurt. And so that's the only guy that I've really ever had that ever tried to do anything to me in the ring, because something, people need to understand something. This is a wrestling business. And it's like when I had the IWF, and we can get in that later, but I want to explain this. It's very important. This goes with what we're saying. It's called the wrestling business. Without the business, there's no wrestling. And what they're forgetting, that wrestling is on the marquee. And you must give them that each and every night. But always remember this, for all you people listening and watching this DVD right now, and you kids that want to break in the business, it is a business. And don't you ever forget it. It is the wrestling business. Without the business, there is no wrestling. So never forget that.
Who were some of the first promoters that you worked for?
Oh my goodness! My first promoters were the Fields down at Gulf Coast. Well, the Fields and the Fullers, they're like the Hatfields and McCoys kind of guys, And what's really neat about all this is that they're all intermingled. Like me being the youngest Gulf Coast heavyweight champion, and you think it's really cool when you get a belt like that. But all you're doing is getting ready at that young age to pass the belt on to another guy. So you're a mediator, in other words. You win the title, but then you're just going to turn around and lose it because they're going to do an angle with another guy that's more experienced than you as a rookie, which is fine with me. I'm just glad that I was there, and happy that I was Rookie of the Year and being used and learning booking skills at 19 years old from Ron Fuller. I'd said me and Ron lived together, and Ron was he owned Pensacola and he owned Knoxville. And so, I would sit in with him and help make suggestions. And it was just very kind of him to even allow me to do that. And I had a lot of respect for Ron, and I still do to this day.
I guess, what was the first major territory that you worked for? Was it Ron's?
Yeah, Ron was my first real major territory. Well, I worked for both. Southeastern Championship Wrestling was in Pensacola and Knoxville, and we had Gordon Soley that hosted the show out of Pensacola. And, Gordon was a dear friend of mine. I loved Gordon so much. And I'm the one who took him to Dr. Jim Andrews when his hip started going. I was the first guy to do that. And, Gordon, I always had a lot of respect for Gordon, and he always took care of me. And he is, without a doubt, JR, and I'm just too bad it's going to piss your little ass off. Bottom line is Gordon Soley is the greatest wrestling commentator in the history of our business, bar none.
Memories of the first time you met David Schultz?
Oh, great memories. David Schultz. Now, let's just set the record straight about David and myself. David and myself are very dear friends to this day. 2020 had nothing to do with David Schultz. I even told him not to interview David Schultz or they'd get slapped. And if you want to talk about 2020, we can get into 2020 right now.
We'll talk about that coming up because I want to lead up to it.
But with David Schultz, me and David were dear friends. David was a real mentor to me. You know what I've always said? David Schultz took a young kid and made a man out of him. David Schultz was one of the greatest workers in this business. And people just don't understand that. When I compare another friend, Frank Brody, and David Schultz, those guys were a lot alike. And when you look at David and myself as a tag team, we were a hell of a tag team. It was Dr. D and the Continental Lover. I mean, we were really, really good. We were both good on the sticks and we were both good in the ring. And it was just a combination that really worked. But you know something? I have very, very high respect for David. David took me, David's more closer my age. So when you ask me the other question about mentors are usually older guys. What David helped me do as a young kid was go from being a kid to a man. And I was at that age that was vulnerable, that you could have been taken advantage of or you could have been done the right way. Well, David made sure that I was taken care of no matter what. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But David Schultz will always be my friend and he'll always be my partner. And he's a man himself and he'll answer the same way I just did. We've always been friends and we've always been that way. And David knows how I feel about him and I know how David feels about me. And for the rest of the people, I really don't give a crap what you think. It's what we think. It's about David and me. And David's a private person, and I'm a pretty private person. I'm one of the very few wrestlers that actually, when the business finished me, I didn't leave the business. Ole Anderson did that. But I was able to go in the television business and make a real big success with myself, as well as David was able to go on and be one of the top bounty hunters in the world. And so between us two, I've always said you can't stop talent. And we both had talent. And we're just two good guys trying to make a living, and things happened. And it's sad that the way they happened, because we could have done tremendous things.
Memories of teaming with them?
Oh man, it's a lot of cool memories. God, man, we used to have great matches. I mean, from Dothan to Knoxville to Pensacola. I mean, man, we used to have riots. From the riots we had to winning championships to doing interviews and riding in the car with David. I mean, it was just fun. I mean, we just had fun times. And, You can't buy those times. It was like when we were signing autographs, we were sitting over there talking. We were signing it. We had so many autographs to sign. I mean, because people haven't seen us in so long together that people wanted to really see that we actually don't hate each other and we're actually really dear friends. And they lined up for autographs and we were talking. And I looked over at Dave and he looked at me and he goes, man, he said, where does time go? And see, you can't buy the time back. And so all you guys now that think your crap doesn't stink and all of a sudden, you think you're bigger than life because you're on Vince McMahon show and all this. Just remember this, guys. It is a fleeting moment. And I'm going to give you some advice that was given to me when I was a young kid. Save $25 out of each $100 you make and don't ever touch it. And if you want to put more aside, you should. But that's the least amount you should put in a bank. $25 out of each 100 you make. And that way, if something does go down, you have something to back you up besides, oh, I'm this or I'm that. Because out of sight, out of mind. You don't really mean anything, my brothers. So just understand that. Sooner you understand that this is a business, the better off you'll be.
What territories did you and Schultz work together at?
Knoxville, mainly Knoxville and Pensacola. And where else was it? Gulf Coast? Yeah, those were the main territories. Okay.
After working for the Fullers, how did you wind up in Southwest Championship Wrestling?
Well, I actually went from L.A. I went from the Fullers to L.A. and I took Moondog Main's spot when Lonnie got killed in the wreck. And then I had a good run out there. Then I came back. Where did I go from there? Probably back to the Fullers. Then I went back to L.A. Then from there I went to I was in Atlanta because they were wanting. Ole had killed Atlanta booking, so he was wanting Wahoo and me and and one other guy. I think it was Austin Idol maybe come in there to help booster the crowds because we were selling out everywhere in Southwest, and also we were the first really other outfit per se than the main guys to be on USA Cable. That's how Vince got his cable deal, and I can explain that to you later. But that all came out of Southwest Championship Wrestling, and something, I had a great time at Southwest. We drew a ton of money out there. Joe Blanchard was a great payoff guy. And I was so happy for all of us that were out there. We had, a good group of guys. But Scott Casey myself popped that territory.
I was going to ask you some of your memories of Scott Casey.
Oh, Scott Casey. Oh, I love old Scott Casey, man. And one thing about Scott Casey, you'd be in the middle of a match getting a lot of heat. You'd be all juiced up, pounding. And he reminded me of a Mexican wrestler. He'd just jump up out of nowhere and start making a comeback. So, bam, you'd have to cut him off and, knock him down and just say, hey, man, where the hell do you think you're going? We got 25 more minutes to go. You'll have plenty of time to do your comeback. He goes, I know. I don't know what got into me. I know what got into me. You're not thinking. And so me and Wahoo did a $1,000 bet that we couldn't draw money, that me and Casey couldn't draw money. Well, I took the Indians' money because when I left San Antonio, I drew the largest crowd in San Antonio wrestling history. We turned away 10 to 15,000 people that night, and we begged him to do closed circuit TV over at the Marriott, but they wouldn't do it. And when I went in there, they were drawing 800 people. So when I left, we were drawing 22,000 people. Me and Casey sold out every stinking arena in the state of Texas more than once. And it's a shame that Tully Blanchard wouldn't put all that up his nose and kill the territory, because the partner, you talk about his partner was Barons. Anybody with the last name Barons sucks. Now, you can't trust them, I'm just telling you. And this guy name was Rick Barons or something like that, but he was a cocaine dealer. And so that's how all that happened. And it was really strange that he had the USA contract, and he's the one that sold the contract to Vince McMahon, and that's how Vince McMahon got USA Network.
Wow. We're going to talk about that too coming up. The change from USA to WWE, WWF at the time. Members of Joe Blanchard, was he a fair booker?
He wasn't a booker.
It was Tully who was the booking?
Tully wasn't booking. Tully couldn't book his ass. Let's just get that straight. Tully is not a booker. He's not a good brain in the business. He thinks he is, but he's not. I mean, Tully was good in the ring, but it's like Wahoo said. You know, you're so jealous of Ed and Scott Casey because you can't draw. You're not drawing the money, and you're jealous of them. And what I couldn't understand when I would be sitting up there with Wahoo, going over the book and stuff, and Tully be calling each week saying, "Oh, am I going to get the belt this week?" I told him, "I don't want a belt. Please don't give me a belt. I don't need a belt." And we're going over angles and doing angles. Tully Blanchard, you know, I understand he's a preacher. That's very interesting to me. You know, he's going to heal the sick and raise the dead now. Okay. But bottom line is, he's the one that killed that territory. And then the Barons guy got busted on cocaine. And I don't know if he's still in Huntsville or he's out or whatever. But what happened was a split happened, and Barons took his money, and Joe had to finally sell out for a measly $20,000 after making all that stinking money that, hey, just me and Casey made him. Because he wasn't doing but so-so with his own son and Gino Hernandez. And it's my understanding, I know that one of the biggest wrestlers in the history of this business went out with Gino Hernandez's mother, and I understand that Paul Bosch was actually Gino Hernandez's son. And I know that for a fact. That was told by his mother to one of my best friends that I used to live with.
You mean Gino was the son of Paul Bosch?
That's right.
Right, that's what I heard that too.
Yeah, and that's how come he worked on top in Houston all the time.
What are your memories about Gino? Did you
Gino was a very selfish type guy. Him and Tully belonged to it. You know something? When you're like a son of a promoter or whatever, you think you are the chosen one. Okay, well, you're not the chosen one, because all the time, I'm not saying you don't have talent. That has nothing to do with it. But so many bookers have made the mistake of always writing themselves in the main event each and every night, no matter what. Even though you got guys underneath that could draw more money, I am the booker. I am God. I know everything. So I'm gonna write the story the way I want it done. I'm gonna be the main event. And these guys underneath can draw the houses, but I'm going to get all the credit for it. Well, it didn't work for me, and it didn't work for Scott Casey, because we were the main event, and we drew all the money. The Funks knew it. Wahoo McDaniel knew it. And Tully, it killed Tully Blanchard to know that.
Do you think Gino Hernandez was murdered? Obviously, you know the whole past with his drugs and cocaine.
Was he murdered?
There's rumors going around that he was murdered with the cocaine. They made it staged where
Well, I think he just
OD.
I think it was either suicide or he OD'd. I'm not a coroner, but you know,
okay.
Why would they stage that? I mean, if you're going to kill somebody or murder somebody in the dope industry, I mean, we've read how many shows that they just shoot you. You know, it's kind of like Dino Bravo with the cigarettes in Canada. I mean, if you deal with those type of individuals for long, something may happen to you bad. It's not good.
Memories of Bob Sweetan.
Bob Sweetan?
Bob Sweetan.
I don't have a lot of memories of Bob Sweetan. He came in late in the game at Southwest. I really don't know Bob Sweetan that well. Okay. But I only heard that I know that he got in trouble and was shipped out to Canada for doing some not so nice things.
I didn't hear about that, so do you want to talk about it or no?
Well, I'd rather not talk about that.
Okay, no problem.
That has nothing to do with me.
Right. Memories of Manny Fernandez.
Manny Fernandez. I don't have very many, Manny. I welcome him in the Southwest Championship Wrestling, and I didn't work with him very much. But Manny has a tendency to think that he draws more money than he actually drew. And I like Manny. That's fine. But Manny is Manny. And to me, he didn't draw that. If he drew money in San Antonio, why wasn't he drawing money when I left? It just didn't happen. I don't have a problem with Manny Fernandez. Am I supposed to have a problem with Manny?
What's that?
I said, am I supposed
No,
to
not
have?
at all. I'm just asking if you have any memories of him.
No, that's about it. He came in and, he was always a good hand in the ring. But I can't put my finger on a lot about Manny. Manny was good in the ring. I'll tell you, he was a great guy. You want to bring up a guy at Southwest Championship Wrestling who was great in the ring was Tiger Conway Jr. I think Tiger, he was a second generation wrestler, and he never has really gotten the credit that he needed. And Tiger Conway Jr. was really a good hand in the ring and really good on the stick. I mean, I enjoyed working with Tiger.
Were you there when Nick Bockwinkel came into the territory?
A couple of times. I love Nick. I think that you're talking about a class act. He did more when he came into territory. It was funny because you asked me, people ask me, where have you worked? Well, I've worked pretty much everywhere. AWA, NWA, WWF. I mean, if you look at the territories I've been in, I've been pretty much, in territories that were associated with all these. Nick Bockwinkel was a class act. I got to see him at the Fan Fest, and it was so good to see him. He's looking really good, and I'm very proud. Nick Bockwinkel was a epitome of a champion. I never got to talk too much to Nick as far as business-wise. We'd only sit and do gossip kind of stuff, talk. Hey, how you doing? How's your family? How's this? How's that? But that's about it. But far as being a champion, Vern Gagne picked a great champion. And I'll tell you another good champion. Another guy who hasn't gotten a lot of credit is a friend of mine, is Larry Zbyszko. I've always said about Larry, he's never really gotten the claim or what he should have gotten as far as his in-ring stuff. I mean, he was great on the stick, but he was also really good in the ring. And Larry Zbyszko, I consider a good friend of mine as well. And I'm not saying that because he's my friend, but I go back 30 years with Larry. And Larry has always worked hard in the ring, and he's always done his best to put his best foot forward for the fans. And that's the way I look at it. Nick Bockwinkel was the same way. Manny Fernandez was the same way. I don't know a lot about Manny. I don't like to get into Manny's personal problems. Everybody has personal problems. A guy can sit in on a shoot interview and knock everybody, but that's not why I'm here to knock anybody. I'm going to tell you the damn truth, and that's just the way it is.
Wayne Ferris, memories of Wayne.
Who?
Honky Tonk Man?
Wayne Ferris. My first experience with Wayne was in Ohio. When him and Randy Rhodes, me and Idol went up there to work for Buddy Fuller. And I was only there at a short time. I think Honky Tonk is one of the most talented guys. I love Honky Tonk. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he still has a lot to offer the business. And one day soon, you just never know where Honky might just show up.
You talked about him a little bit earlier on. You mentioned Bruiser Brody. What are your memories of Bruiser Brody?
I can remember when his kid was born. And we were in San Antonio. And he was taking his son to swimming lessons as a 6-month-old. And, people always say he's a bully, Schultz a bully. Some guys say, I never saw Frank as a bully. I always saw Frank as Frank. And I knew him as a friend. I never knew him as a foe. I can only say that he was a great dad. He was a great father and a great husband. And one thing about it, and the way he died was a little iffy. I'm not pleased with that. And I don't think anybody in the business that has any cojones would be pleased with that.
What did you hear about him and Jose Gonzalez? I mean, we talked to Dutch Mantel and Salvio Vega and guys that were in the locker room and heard their versions of what happened. I mean, what is your understanding of what happened? Well,
I just understand that he got kind of snuck attack. I mean, he got Pearl Harbored, as we would say in the wrestling business, and I think that stemmed from maybe Bruiser being tough in the ring on him or something, and maybe he scared the guy or whatever, but still you don't kill a guy because he scared you. You either try to work it out or do something, but you just don't go stab a guy when he's taking a shower. I think that to me showed maybe why Bruiser Brody beat him up. Maybe, there's no way you can explain why that happened, because it should have never happened. I mean, that's murder. And this guy's walking around today because he got away with murder.
Memories of One Man Gang.
I don't have a lot of memories. He was more with Fritz. One Man Gang was good though.
Yeah.
He was good in the ring. He was a hoot, man. He did well. He was more on the Fritz side. I worked with Fritz too. I was the world's junior heavyweight champion for Fritz. But and I enjoyed working with Fritz to a point. I didn't have a problem because I was a heel. I worked against the Von Erich, so I was perfect.
Right.
If you're a babyface going into Von Erich territory, you're in trouble. But the One Man Gang was a great guy. I mean, when you look at one of the greatest wrestling managers of all time, you got to look at Gary Hart. Gary Hart. You know what I loved about Gary Hart? All you people watching this, Gary Hart had the cojones to bring in other managers such as J.J. Dillon and book him there while he was still the booker. Most of the time, and he had Skandor Akbar there, who was a freaking legend. Skandor was a great guy. But he brought in like a J.J. Dillon, and everybody always used to say about J.J., you better watch him. He'll try to get your spot. And I can't say that about J.J. because I like J.J. personally, and I've never seen him do that. And I only had the pleasure of working for him and with him very, very shortly in the Tampa territory, and we can go over that in a little while. But Gary Hart was a smart man because he knew that if he brought in enough guys to put enough heat on him and he's drawing money, well, he was the booker. That's going to make him look good. And that's where so many people miss the business. Look, it's not about all you getting a pat on the back because you're in the main event. It's about the guy who puts the whole card together and makes it a great card from top to bottom. That's where you sell tickets. It's not just one match. All that match leads up to the main event. And you got to have the guts as a booker. And that's like when I owned the IWF, I never, ever. And Blackjack Mulligan begged me to come back in the ring. And at that time, I was young enough to do that. And I said, you know something, Jack? I'm not going to be like the rest of these assholes that wrote themselves in on top. I am just not going to do that. I'm going to build it with who we have here, and I'm going to stay in the background. I'm going to be the booker. I'm going to produce this thing, and I'll do the color commentary with Kevin Kelly, and we'll build it from there. I'm not going to write myself in, just like everybody else did. That's where the problem was in the business. When you have bookers that write yourself in the main event each and every night, you start having really problems in the locker room. Well, TNA right now, Jeff Jarrett's writing himself right in the main events right off the bat, and he's one of the owners of the company.
Ivan Putski, was he in the tournament?
Oh man, Putski, shoot yeah. Man, Ivan and me, we had a lot of good matches, and Ivan ran some towns for San Antonio, and we used to pack those towns. Ivan and myself, and like I think one of the YouTube matches were where they were talking about the thumbs, and I'll explain the thumbs. Ivan Putski, for all you non-intelligent wrestling fans, let me tell you something. He had a gimmick where he had people come out of the stands, punch him. I mean, he was like a tough guy. He could handle all that. So when you work with Putski, he's not going to go down with just one punch. He's not going to go down with just a kick. I mean, you had to work him over to get him down. And it was hard to get him down then. But Putski sold more for me when he worked for me than I've ever seen him sell with anybody, because he knew that I would make sure that he was taken care of. And I enjoyed working with Ivan, and I was just a great guy. Inside and out the ring. He was super, super, super.
You actually teamed up with Chavo Guerrero too, right?
No, I never teamed up with
Chavo.
Shoot, no.
Okay.
No, I used to wrestle him.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a big feud in Los Angeles. I would never team up with Chavo Guerrero, ever.
What are your memories of working with Chavo?
Well, we had a lot of great matches. He was known as the Giant Killer. Well, since I wasn't a giant, so, I mean, it's hard to kill me when I wasn't a giant. But anyway, he was known as beating all the guys that came in, and a lot of Spanish wrestlers don't like to do jobs. They're known for that. And, but Chavo Guerrero, he was in Los Angeles, and I had a lot of feuds with him. I had I was America's heavyweight champion out there. One half of the America's heavyweight champions were Leroy Brown. And then, the San Diego TV champion, all that stuff doesn't mean anything unless you put butts in the seats. And so we were drawing some money out there, doing pretty well. I'll never forget when my first trip into to Los Angeles Olympic Auditorium, which I used to love to wrestle there. There's nothing like Richmond 95171 at the Olympic Auditorium. I went in, and my first night I wrestled there was sold out. I was the main event against Mil Mascaras. And I was taking Moondog Main's, place. And I'll never forget walking down that aisle. I went, holy smoke, man, this is wonderful. It's going to be good. And then, I had a good run there. Me and Piper tagged for a little while there. Then Piper left. And then Roddy passed the torch to me. And then I continued, and it was kind of like, the Eddy Mansfield hour out there. I managed everybody from Ito to the Hangman to Bad Leroy Brown, and wrestled. I told Leo Garibaldi one night, I said, why don't you just put me on the first match too? You got me on the second match to the main event. So why don't you just put me on that and help them out too,
What are your memories of Piper?
Piper's wonderful, man. I just hugged his neck not long ago at Fan Fest. Piper is one of the, he's brilliant. He's just got it, man. I mean, he's one of those guys who's just got it. And you either got it or you don't have it. And I was one of those guys who's got it. And you either have it or you don't have it. And Piper can talk on TV. He can do what he needs to do in the ring. And he can do public appearances. And he can go to places that don't embarrass, the business. So many guys kill our own business. Kayfabe killed our business. Kayfabe was meant for the boys. Kayfabe was meant to keep the boys stupid. And it did for so many years. And now kayfabe is off, and you got the biggest wrestling promoter saying that wrestling entertainment is wrestling entertainment. And I don't hear any of you guys bitching about that because he's paying you, right? Before you so worried about kayfabe. Kayfabe is where the NWA, the No Wrestlers Allowed, was involved, where they kept their thumb on all of us, where we wasn't allowed to speak. It was more of a slave business, and I've already told you about Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves, so I had to take it upon myself to free the wrestlers, because he didn't free the slave. He didn't free the wrestlers, so I did. And I'm very proud I did. So now the guys can make some money.
What about the Funks, Dory and Terry?
Man, they're my guys. I was asked a question one time, and I was kind of put on the spot. Who was the better champion, Jack Briscoe or Dory Funk? And I said, they're both the same. I said, I will not answer that on the grounds that it will get me killed. And I said, because when you look at both of them, they were great champions. Jack Briscoe was great. Dory Funk was great. Terry, he was really the first oddball world champion that had more of a wild horse kind of style to him. But he was great in the ring. And when the Funks are my dear friends, and I had the pleasure of going and wrestling for 1 week straight on the west side of Colorado, where you go across the Continental Divide. You really do. I wrestled Dory one night, Terry the next, Dory the following night, Terry the next. And let me tell you something. We would go 45 minutes a night. I enjoyed that so much, and I learned so much from those guys. And when they were asking people in Southwest Territory who would go, nobody else volunteered to go. I was the top heel in there. And I stood up and I said, I'll go with you. and I had the best fun, and I never regret going. I enjoyed it.
What about Tito Santana? Was he there?
No, Tito wasn't there.
Okay. Stan Hansen?
Stan wasn't there when I was there. No, but I was with Stan in Atlanta. Stan Hansen's a great guy. Stan Hansen was good in the ring. And there's some wild stories about Stan, because Stan, he had a little hard time seeing when he took his glasses off. And, a lot of other guys had to duck,
right.
When you got that layer to keep your head on.
Eric Emery, he was in the territory a little bit, right?
Yeah, Eric, I like Eric. He came in after me. Eric Emery really was pushed for some reason. I don't know, but he never really drew the money that should have been. And, he did it in Dallas. He had a little shot in Tampa and all that. But, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And Eric's a good guy. There's nothing wrong with him. He's fine.
Were you there when a young Ricky Morton came up in the territory?
Well, Ricky Morton's the same age I am, so he ain't that damn young.
Right.
I don't know. He came after. Buck Robley brought him in. Buck Robley brought him in. That was after I had left.
Right.
And the territory never drew what we did before after that. I just tell you that. It never drew what we drew. Never did. Little Ricky, I like Ricky Morton. Ricky Morton's not that young, though. When you say a young Ricky Morton,
yeah,
it was a young Eddy Mansfield, too. But no, he's either the same age as I am or older than I am. So,
were you in the territory when Anita came through?
Anita?
Yeah,
I was in L.A. as well when Anita, Go, Tenru, all of them. Oh, absolutely. I wrestled all those guys.
Any memories stand out, or just?
Well, they're just good guys. They were technically sound. Like then I wrestled an hour Broadway with Tatsumi Fujinami. It was broadcast over to Japan, out of Los Angeles. And when you look at that some of the wrestlers that came through L.A. like Tenru, Nago, and Fujinami, those guys are huge stars in Japan. And the problem is they were always treated not that well here, and I never could figure that out. But when you go to Japan, you're treated completely different. But those guys were good hands in the ring, and they were really, really good. I enjoyed working with them.
You had mentioned earlier that you went and worked for Fritz's territory, World Class.
Yeah.
What was Fritz Von Erich like as a promoter?
Fritz was a hands-on promoter. He was good. Fritz, World Class Championship Wrestling was hot. It was hot like, Southwest Championship Wrestling was hot. He had his boys, and he had, it was a Von Erich show. And then you had Adams, and then you had, Hernandez was coming in there, and then you had me in there. You had some other heels, like the Missing Link would, and Skandar Egbar would be defeaters for those guys. But you asked me as a promoter, but not as a human being. So
how is he as a human being?
He's a piece of shit.
Why is that?
Well, how many sons killed themselves? Not only was he a piece of shit as a human being, but as a father. And he treated wrestlers like second-class citizens. And when you look at Kevin's the one that should have been dead out of all of them. He did more drugs than any of them. And David, I was close with David. I knew Kevin and David more. I didn't know, I knew Kerry a little bit, not much. And when you look at the other two, but when you go down the line and you go, how many kids that committed suicide of one family? There's got to be a problem somewhere, guys. It's got to come from the top. It's not coming from the bottom. When you have that many kids, that's like Kerry lost his leg because his old man forced him back into wrestling too quick, and his leg didn't heal, so they had to amputate it. And it's just a sad story. It's very sad for and I know Ms. Atkinson is still living today, and she's a very sweet lady and was a very loving mother. But Fritz, to me, as a human being, I got nothing for him.
Did you ever witness any of the crazy Von Erich stories with Curry, Dave, and Kevin?
Yeah. We were in a tag match one night. It was Brody and me. I think we were in the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, and we went in the locker room, and Kerry couldn't even sit in the chair. He was so screwed up. And, it was just drugs everywhere and in that territory at that time. And what's bad about it is that when you're that non-functional that you can't get in the ring and perform, when you've sold tickets to people to see you perform, it's kind of like, I guess you would say what you guys saw with TNA not too long ago.
Right, with Jeff Hardy, you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think the Von Erichs killed their own territory by their antics? By no showing towns and...
I think their old man killed the territory. I think that if he would have had more, he pushed those kids so much that I really think that was the end of it. I think that he pushed them so much that drugs became their outlet. They couldn't take the pressure, and hey, instead of getting them out there and having them take a break and bring some other guys in, no, it's got to be Von Erich, until you want to throw up. And hey, they were like rock stars for a long time, and then all of a sudden, when the dust comes off, you can only cover up so many things so many times, and I looked at it from a different way because I'm in the inside looking out. I just really felt bad for the guys. I mean, I felt bad for Kerry and Kevin and the two younger guys. They were never going to make it in the business if they hadn't been a Von Erich. I mean, they were just too little. And what happened was he destroyed his family within. And he got his comeuppance in the end. They all do.
Memories of Doug Summers.
I don't have a lot of memories of Doug Summers. That only thing I can remember about Doug Summers is he was a good hand. He was a good hand in the ring. He was married to Mike McGurk. And that was one of my last territories I worked. Me and Jimmy Snuka lived together. We were out in Tulsa for George Scott. Right. And it was me and the Snook. Paul Jones was out there. Rip and Swede Hansen. Rip Hawk and Swede Hansen. But so we used to travel together. It was Swede and Rip and Jimmy and me. So we used to have a blast. And we were hoping that everything worked out with George and Leroy to get that territory. But on my last day, as we were leaving town, we went by to say goodbye to Leroy, and sure as shit, who walked in? Bill Watts. Bill Watts was there to lick up the chops and to try to take over what was left. And I got nothing against Bill Watts, but, it is what it is.
Memories of Johnny Valentine, and do you have any good rip stories?
Oh, well, Johnny Valentine, we did a, let me tell you about Johnny, and Greg, I think the world of. Johnny, we did a benefit show out of Southwest up in Lufkin. He was in Lufkin. And that was when he was on his crutches. And I was supposed to get a payoff, me and somebody else. And me and Johnny was sitting at the bar and talking, and I really enjoyed that. And I wouldn't take his money. I wanted him to have the money. Right. You know that $300 or $400 didn't mean that much to me. I was a single guy, and I wanted Johnny to be able to have that money. And and I've never told this story to people because it was really none of their stinking ass business. But Johnny Valentine meant a lot to this business, and he meant a lot to me, and he was much of a man. And I gave him my money back that night, and I can't remember who was with me, did too. And, we sat there and drank, and he was telling me about the time he got shot with a harpoon. And Johnny was a wild guy. Johnny was epitome of, and he was a brilliant booker. He was one of the guys that he knew how to draw money, and he could draw money just because he knew how to do it, and he could write it down, and he was just brilliant. Well, that's how come Greg had such a good career, because, the apple don't fall far from the tree. And you look at Johnny, I was glad that we could do that for him and help him out. And, you know, you look at wrestlers and when you see these fan fests and all this stuff, you look at some of the guys that are not as fortunate as some of the others and you feel real bad for them. And, but then again, when you stop and think, you know, a lot of these guys had a hell of a shot and they made a lot of money. And some of them didn't. But when I see some of them, it's you know, it's not what it used to be. And you got to understand that. It's not what it used to be. And it never will be what it used to be.
Bobby Jaggers, the Hangman.
Oh, the lying son of a bitch that ever walked the face of the earth. Jody Hamilton. Jody Hamilton. We were riding in a car one time. And Jody Hamilton looks over at him and he says, you know something, Jaggers? You couldn't tell the truth if you were talking to your mother. All you do, he is. Jaggers is the biggest liar in the world. So if you've ever done a shoot interview with him, every friggin' one of those damn stories, anything he says is a lie that comes out of his mouth. And I swear to God, anybody in the business will tell you a lie. Ask J.J. Dillon, he'll tell you it's a lie. And it's, you know, hey, he's just a liar. He's one of those guys that can really stretch the truth. And he's got good lies, though. He'll keep you entertained.
Memories of Abdullah the Butcher.
Spanky. Well, let me tell you a story. So I let Spanky come over and stay at my house one day. I'm going to Denver. So the fat ass, spanky ass Abdullah the Butcher breaks my couch. His fat ass sits on my couch and breaks it in half. But instead of, hey, calling me or letting me know, he leaves. He runs out and leaves my key that I gave him with the manager of my condominium where I'm staying. And then so when I come back, my damn couch is broken in half and his fat ass is out, gone. He left, hit the road. But you know something, Abby? I'm going to get you one day, fat boy. Won't be long. I'll come collect my money.
What are your thoughts on the whole, I guess, Abdullah the Butcher situation that's going on now where a wrestler's accusing him of giving him hepatitis C?
Well, here's what I would say to that. Okay, Spanky Man, if someone's accusing you of giving them hepatitis C, there's an easy way to do it. Just go have your blood tested. And if you did do that, shame on you. Because you're in the ring with me a lot of times. I told you, don't you ever cut me, I hit you with a ball bat. And bottom line is this. If you did that to that kid, you need to be man enough to stand up. And second of all, if that kid really wants to get his blood, he owns a restaurant, you know, in Atlanta. And what the kid should do is just call the Georgia Health Department and saying this guy's serving food, right? And he may have hepatitis C. So that way he can find out himself. And what's the guy you're talking about?
I'm not sure if it's the guy's name. He's a worker that had a deal with WWE. And he got released.
And I'm trying to remember his name.
I don't remember.
But if he really wanted to find out, that's how you can get it. But he needs to stand up and be a man. If you're doing that, be a man. It doesn't take, it doesn't cost you a dime. If you do have hepatitis C, you shouldn't be serving food to people either. And number two, you shouldn't be cutting people like you used to do all the time. And third of all, just stand up and do what you need to do. Unlike you did when you broke my couch. And unlike you did at FanFest when they ran your fat ass out of the lobby because you're too cheap to buy a damn booth to sell your tickets or whatever the hell you want to sell. I mean, come on, Abby, get real. And you call yourself a WWE Hall of Famer. Quit acting like a jabroni. You act like a jabroni. Jabronis act like that. You're better than that. You know, if there's a problem somewhere, you need to settle it. That's the way it is.
Southwest Championship Wrestling. Do you have any good road stories from that territory that stick out?
Yeah, there's a lot of road stories. When we were traveling, a lot of times, we would have different girls riding with us. And one time we were in a Coupe de Ville, had a sunroof. They call them sunroofs in Florida, but they're in some places they call them moon roofs. So we'd have these girls, and we're riding down the road. We'd have them stand up and just pull their tops off, and we'd ride down the road and drive these truckers insane. Now, when you talk about road trips, what do you want to hear about a road trip?
Ribbing, anything that goes on the road trips. Ring rats, whatever you want to talk about.
I have to be careful about what I say. But as far as the road trips, we used to do some wild stuff, man. One night, me and Terry Funk and Larry Lang almost got killed going to this town out of San Antonio. This 18-wheel just started jackknifing right in front of us. And I literally had to go up over bushes all the way down. We didn't know what was behind the bushes or anything. Cut back over, cut down, and saved by the bell. We made it to the town on time. Huh. I can tell you what happened to me one time in Los Angeles doing a road trip. So I had a lot of death threats on me in Los Angeles. And so Bob Kubiak was one of the office workers. And so he gave me his 22, to take in my bag. And I had this girl at the time was staying with me. And she was packing my bags. So I was coming from the office. And I said, look, whatever you do, don't put my gun in the bag. I got to get on a plane to fly to San Diego. Well, sure as hell, she put a gun in my bag. And so I get there to check, my bag and all that stuff to go through the screener. And they said, well, hey, could you please stand over here? I go, oh, sure. So I didn't know what was going on. So by that time, all these people are running up. I said, what the hell's going on here? Well, they're coming for you. I said, coming for me? What do they want with me? They said, up against the wall, Mr. Mansfield, you're under arrest. I said, under arrest for what? They said, you got a gun in your bag. I said, you got to be kidding me. What have I got? I said, I know I got a lot of death threats. So one of the guys that used to walk me to the ring happened to be over at the LAX place where they took me. And so I'm sitting in there and they going through my bag and looking at all programs and all kind of stuff like that. And so they got Mike LaBelle on the phone, got Kubiak and all them. They said, yes, he had death threats on him. Yes, he's been having to carry a gun because people wanting to kill him. And that was an accident. He didn't mean to take that on the plane. So what was so funny is they put me on another plane. They drove me out to the tarmac. Let me go. No problem. And I still got to the matches on time and went in. When I walked in, Leo Garibaldi looked at all the other guys. He said, I never want to hear any of you guys being late. This guy just got arrested, got released, put on a new plane, and he's still here on time. But that was really, I got lucky with that one then. And that was just one of the stories about, far as getting in trouble with the cops.
Well, I was going to ask you about Southwest Championship Wrestling. How come you think the territory didn't really take off when it got on the USA Network?
Well, we had already took off.
It was already okay.
Yeah, we had already been blowing and going on USA Network. What happened was they switched bookers. Wahoo left and Slater and Tully got in there and they killed everything. And then they tried to bring Buck Robley in and I was on my way out. The last big thing I did was a hair versus hair match when we drew the largest crowd in San Antonio wrestling history that lasted for 11 years until they went into the bigger building. And so with Wahoo left, I was kind of like a sitting duck because I was Wahoo's guy. As a heel, and Tully Blanchard was a heel, and Slater was a heel, and they all wanted the spot. And Slater wasn't that good a booker, neither was Tully. Great workers, but no good bookers. And so what happened was I left the territory, and Buck came in there, but by then the territory really was gone. Then shortly after it, that's when the beef happened between Barons and Joe Blanchard. And so Barons took the contract of USA, which we'd been on the whole time I was there. We'd been on there.
Right.
And it took that contract and sold it to Vince McMahon. So that's how Vince McMahon got it. And he got that freaking contract, man, for $7,000 a week.
That's crazy.
USA Network.
Memories of Terry Gordy.
Oh, Terry, I love Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy and me used to have a lot of fun together. Oh my goodness. In Atlanta and then St. Louis. We tagged in St. Louis a few times. We just had a lot of fun. Terry Gordy was one of the best workers, the big guys in the business, and me and him were were good in the ring. And I'm going to tell you something. You know, Michael Hayes thinks his crap doesn't stink, but I'm going to tell you what Terry Gordy told me. Michael P.S. Hayes, about you. You think your stuff doesn't stink. Terry Gordy. So I'm in there working the first time with him in a tag, and he says to me, he goes, "God, man, I wish I'd have had a partner like you, man. We'd have really done something." And he says, "You know what that PS stood for in Hayes?" I go, "No, pretty shitty." Huh. And that's what he thought of Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes, yeah, he was all about Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes wasn't that good in the ring. He really wasn't. If you watch his matches, he's horrible. And but now he thinks he's God's gift to wrestling because his old butt boy JR got him a job up there with the WWE. And that's fine. You know, they're running out of ideas. You guys are getting dumb. You're running out of ideas. You know, it's just funny. I've tried to watch the show, and I can't watch the whole show anymore because it's so bad. I mean, the angles are bad. TNA's bad. Both shows are really stinking. And yeah, he's got a cable rating because he's the only game in town besides TA. TNA doesn't really mean anything. TNA stole my gimmick. I brought professional wrestling. I was the first guy to ever soundstage professional wrestling with the IWF at Universal Studios. I had it there until I got ready to close it. And then I had Eric Bischoff, ATM Bischoff, calling me, all the time. "Ed, we want to come in there and shoot." I said, "I don't give a rat's ass what you want, Eric." "Oh, but hey, I'll give you Sting." I said, "What are you going to give me Sting for?" And this is nothing against you, Sting. The bottom line is he just kept bringing up your name. I said, "I don't need Sting. You're not drawing with Sting now. What is Sting going to draw for me?" I said, "Why don't you just give me a whole bunch of money and I'll just go away? You know, like you're giving all these other guys. You're giving them, you know, you're just writing all these big checks." And he lied on his resume. He was nothing but an announcer for the AWA. And he lied on his resume to get the job at Turner. And then it caught up with him. And then you hired guys underneath you. You had like J.J. Dillon. You had Jody Hamilton. You had great brains in there underneath you, and you wouldn't even use them. So you took WCW down and all the boys down with them. You think because you paid the boys too much money, you paid them way too much money. I mean, I don't mind people making money, but you're giving away too much money of other people's money. It's a thing called the wrestling business. Without the business, there's no wrestling. So when you kill the business, there's no wrestling. There's no WCW anymore. There's no Turner Broadcasting at 6:05 anymore. Because guess what, Eric? You can look yourself in the mirror every stinking day you live and say, "I killed the damn company." How would you like that? So what I did on 2020, I made people pay the guys, but I wanted them to be paid. There's no middle ground in wrestling. And I'm going to finish this statement. I made them pay the guys. But you know something? Wrestling has no middle ground. There's either complete marks that are dumber than a friggin' stump, or guys that want to cheat the guys out of money. There's a happy medium here, guys, that needs to be done like business is really done. You pay the guys a fair wage. Hey, let me tell you something. Just because you think you've been on TV, somebody shouldn't guarantee you $1,000 to come in if you ain't putting asses in the seats. I can tell you that. Bottom line is this. I'm not going to guarantee you $1,000. How many tickets you going to guarantee I sell? You need to be paid accordingly to what your ass draws. And that's been the problem with this business right now. This business could get back to being the right way and do the right thing because Vince does it right. He's not going to pay over 25 or 30% talent fees, period. And that's the way you run the industry. Not that, okay, I'm going to give this guy $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 because I like him. And I'm going to mark out because he's going to come to my match. I give two crap about you and your marks. Hey, if you're not drawing money, you don't need to be paying that kind of money. You know, you pay a guy a decent, fair wage, but he's also got to pull his weight. That's just the way the business is.
Without a doubt. You recently said that the only reason the NWA doesn't exist is that they were a band of thieves that didn't want to pay the wrestlers what they deserved. You kind of just talked about that. You want to elaborate on that more? Or?
Yeah, the NWA, the band of thieves. The NWA was no wrestlers allowed. Cut that camera real quick.
All right, we were talking about a recent quote you had talked about. You recently said that the only reason the NWA doesn't exist is that they were a band of thieves that didn't want to pay the boys, which, what they deserve. Can you elaborate on that more?
Yeah, NWA means no wrestlers allowed. And I'm going to show this probably for the first time it's ever been on camera. This is a book that was for all the promoters. This has every senior promoter, every promoter there is that was in the NWA. Jim Crockett Jr. was the president. Geigel was the first vice president. My buddy Ron Fuller was the second vice. James E. Barnett, secretary and treasurer. Board of directors, James E. Barnett, Jim Crockett, Fuller, Geigel, Victor Jovica, Mike LaBelle, Vince McMahon, that's senior, Frank Tunney, Fred Ward. And then you got all their numbers listed right there. And then it goes by territory by territory. See here, you got All Pro Japan. That was booked by the Funks then. You got California Athletic Club. That was by Bastine. Then you got Capital Sports. And that's Carlos Colon. Capital Wrestling was Vince McMahon. Then you get into the Crockett Promotions, Championship Wrestling from Florida, which was, as you know, they got Jim Dillon down and Gerald Briscoe, but that's Barnett and Eddie Graham. It just goes on to cover all the NWA. This was a secret book that was given out in Las Vegas each and every year. And I went to 2 of those with Ron Fuller. And what they did in those secret meetings where they all got together, the NWA, when you've always heard the statement that thieves make strange bedfellows. Well, these are all a bunch of thieves in the NWA. And they were held together by one guy, Sam Mushnick. He held them together because he had the brains to keep them together. All the rest of them were like piranhas trying to get at each other. And what is so funny is this, that you're such a powerful organization with all these territories around the country, and then Vince McMahon comes in and he's snatching little guys over here. He's cherry picking this guy, this guy, this guy. You guys, the NWA, turned tail and ran. Why in the world, after you stolen millions and millions of dollars, would you not keep your territory running? Vince McMahon can't run your towns every stinking week like you could. You could have kept the NWA going. What happened was you were all too damn greedy. You didn't want to spend the money to have to keep paying. You didn't want to pay the guys. Bottom line was you didn't want to pay the wrestlers. So you'd rather fold 10 up like a bunch of cowards and run and hide. Just like 2 fat rats in the junkyard, like I told you. That's what happened to the NWA. Why would, after 50, 60 years you've been in existence, would you turn tail just because Vince McMahon cherry-picked a few of your talent and he had a cable TV deal or he was going to syndicate? Well, you guys already had TV, each and every town. All you do is you go back to what made you. Hey, you take one guy, so what? Build another guy. And I don't want to hear the excuse, the towns when they see Tommy Rich or Tony Atlas. You guys are full of crap. You know what happened was? You got exposed. You got really exposed. And Vince McMahon exposed what kind of characters you guys really were. You were just a bunch of thieves. And when it came down to having to pay the boys, you'd rather fold tent and run like a nomad. You didn't want to stay there and pay the boys. And I cannot, to this day, believe that you would give up from the Gulf Coast all the way up to New York away for one guy. And you did. You folded.
What are your thoughts on Sam Mushnick?
Sam Mushnick was the guy who kept NWA together. Sam Mushnick was a very, very intelligent guy. great businessman, and his payoffs at the Kill were great. That's the only reason Kansas City territory existed, was because of Sam Muchnick. Because Kansas City territory was so stinking bad with payoffs, it wasn't even, it was a joke.
Worse than Memphis?
Close. Those two are about the same. It's like what David Schultz said, who was the promoter he hated the most? It was Jerry Jarrett. And there's a reason. You know, if you look back, you know why Vince Russo is where he is today? Jerry Jarrett, when he was with Vince, took him out of the room that Vince needed him to stay in and put him up there writing. And now it's so funny that he's Vince Russo, everywhere Vince Russo goes, or everywhere Jarrett goes, Vince Russo goes.
Right.
Now, what do you need a writer that killed the territory? I still believe that Vince Russo is on McMahon's payroll.
A lot of people say that.
And you can't change my thoughts. And I'm going to tell you the way I think, because what are you going to do? You can't do nothing about it.
Thoughts on Jim Barnett?
Hey, I used to hate Jim Barnett. I really did. Oh my God, all my lovely superstars.
Everybody does the impression.
And I want to say this about Jim Barnett. When I had the IWF, Jim Barnett called me, and I'll never forget this. And my whole respect for Jim Barnett changed. When you look at what Jim Barnett did for the business, he did a lot of good for the business. He told me, he says, Eddie, my boy, he goes, I had nothing to do with what they did to you. I said, that's bullshit. I said, you were behind it. He said, oh, no, I wasn't. He said, Ole Anderson was behind it. Ole Anderson is the one that did that to you. He said, I wanted you for your talent. And see, Barnett liked younger guys that had a good head on their shoulders. And one thing about it, see, I already learned how to book. I knew how to work angles. And see, Ole was terrified of me because I could draw money. I've already proven it. Everywhere I went, I drew money.
Right.
And he was next. See, he was an old guy, kept writing himself in on top. You know, and it's like I said about Bookers, he kept writing himself in top. And Rose Ward, Fred Ward's own daughter, told my friend Donnie Sanders, who worked at Dynamite, Donnie Sanders, everything that Eddie said is right. Ralph, Ole, and her father buried me because they didn't want me to get too powerful like a Booker or something, because they knew that was coming.
Right.
You know, I mean, I was groomed for that, from Wahoo to the Briscoes helped me, to everybody. I mean, and the Ron Fuller. I mean, they were grooming me to be somebody. You know what I mean? And I worked hard at it. And so what happened was Ole killed me, and you know, Ole killed me. He killed my career. And, you know, that's just wrong to do that to somebody. Not only me, he just did it to the guy who stood up to him.
What was your first memories of meeting Ole?
My first meeting of Ole was in Atlanta. I had gone in to do Atlanta TV. He was a big mouth, overbearing, tyrant, kind of just overbearing. I thought he was overrated, number one. I didn't think he could work as good as he thought he could work.
A lot of people say Ole, you know, was a bully. Do you consider him a bully?
I consider him a bully, but not a badass bully.
Like Bill Watts?
Well, no, I consider two bullies that are badasses, Brody and David Schultz.
All right.
That they will actually whip your ass.
How was Ole as a booker? You kind of...
Oh, he sucked. Ole Anderson sucked as a booker. He was great at writing. And if you don't believe me, ask Buck Robley. He killed Atlanta. Ole killed Atlanta, Georgia. Then they brought in Robert Fuller, and he didn't do it. It was dead when Robert got there. He didn't even have a fair shot. Then so they called Buck Robley to come in and get the Omni back up, to drawing again. And I mean, it was drawing like 12,000 people or less when Ole left, and that was unheard of. I mean, he was drawing $22,000 houses in the Omni. He almost killed it. So Buck went in, and so when Buck got it going again, what he wanted to do was he wanted to come back in and get the credit again, see? And Buck got the chance to say that to him at FanFest. He told him, Ole's telling him about all this. He said, Ole, you know good and well you killed Atlanta. You're the worst booker I ever seen. You killed Atlanta. Then you brought Robert Fuller in. It was already dead. And then they brought me in, and I got it back up. And then you wanted to come in and take my job. But he did tell that to Ole Anderson.
What did Ole say?
What's he going to say? He says, Buck, don't come out here telling them guys that. Buck said, I'll just shut up. You know it's the truth. And that was exact what happened.
Did you like working for the Georgia territory?
I was coming in and out. I liked Atlanta. I was coming in and out a lot. I did. I really enjoyed it. Georgia was a good territory. Ole Anderson was the one that killed it.
Some of the talent that was there, I'm going to mention some names you could comment on. Kevin Sullivan.
Oh, Kevin's a good guy. We did the XWF together.
Dusty.
Dusty's Dusty.
Did you get along with him?
I get along with Dusty, yeah. Dusty has a fragile ego.
Tommy Rich.
Tommy Rich, I don't care for Tommy too much. He's a good talent, but personally, I'm not a real big Tommy Rich fan.
Why is that?
I just never got along with him.
Okay.
He has a fragile ego too.
There's a lot of rumors speculating why he got the NWA title. You know, obviously related to Barnett and all. Do you believe any of those rumors?
Well, I can tell you what the Sheik told me.
Go ahead.
And the Sheik told me that he was coming up at I think he stayed at the Colony, New Colony, whatever Barnett's house was. He was coming up the elevator and he saw Tommy Rich and Jim Barnett in bed. That's a quote. Don't quote. Eddy Mansfield didn't say that. The Sheik, Eddie Farhat, said that. And he said that not only to me, but to hundreds of other people. And I don't think Zib lied. But that's what was said. And that's what was told to me. You asked the question, that's what was told to me. And I'm not trying to dodge the question, but that's what was told to me.
Memories of Paul Bosch.
Paul Bosch was good. He was decent. He was a quirky kind of guy. Great payoff guy. And he knew how to, Paul Bosch really knew how to promote wrestling. And when you look at how he handled Houston and the way he handled it like a baby, and he nurtured that child and he gave it the best that it could happen. He put on the shows that was like really, really good. He brought Houston the best of the best each and every Friday night. It was a pleasure to work for him.
Did you ever work for Mid-South for Watts at all, or no?
No.
Okay.
I worked for Leroy McGirt.
Okay. And then, yeah, he was his competition, right?
Well, I think Bill Watts stole the territory from Leroy, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know. I came in with Jimmy Snuka, Paul Jones, George Scott. That's the only time I had anything to do with Tulsa or that area. So I really don't know the background of what Bill did or he didn't. Bill was a real good promoter. Bill knew the business. I can't say bad things about Bill. I mean, Bill was there when he was licking his chops when we were leaving. I could tell, you know. I mean, where he could get Tulsa and Oklahoma and everything, but he ran it. I mean, he had a great territory. What killed him was he outsmarted himself. What happened with Bill Watts was that he tried to go national at a time when the business wasn't ready for national. He should have focused on what he was doing, and he would have been successful to this day. That's what happened with the NWA. The NWA, if they would have focused on what is happening, what was happening then, instead of worrying about TBS and all this other, TBS wasn't the NWA. I mean, it wasn't. It was all the other territories that made up the thing.
Right.
But that's what happened. They ran and hide. You know.
Who was the best booker you ever worked for and why?
The best booker ever, let me tell you, to me, the best booker in the business bar none, is Buck Robley. And I worked for him in San Antonio on a short span. But Buck, he has the talent. He knows how to go in and draw money. And that's the key. It's like me. If I was booking somewhere, I know how to go in. Not only I can produce a television show, I can direct it. I can even train the damn wrestlers like I did with IWF. But I can also book a territory. I'm probably the only guy in this business can actually do all of those things. You know that?
I hear you. Now listen.
And so, Buck Robley to me is the best booker in the business.
Who would you consider the worst, Ole?
Oh boy, it would be him and I tell you a guy that would be kind of like would go, as one of the worst bookers would be J.J. Dillon, because J.J. will, and it wasn't really J.J.'s fault, but he would always get in a territory where all of a sudden, boom, cable TV was hitting, and so I can't say if he would be the worst. No, I would probably say Robert Fuller.
Okay. Now you worked for Eddie Graham down in Florida?
Yes, I did.
What do you remember working that territory?
I had a lot of fun memories. Jerry Jack Briscoe, we used to dress in the same dressing room together and just tell a bunch of stories, have a good time. And I begged him the first day I was there. I came in for Jody Hamilton.
Right.
And so I just came out of San Antonio and my hair was just growing back out because I did the hair versus hair, And so, anyway, I was sitting there and Eddie says, he comes in. I had a lot of good talks with Ed, while I was there. And he says, hey, look, I need to put this belt on you. I said, I don't want that belt. I said, because I don't know if I want to stay here that long. He goes, oh, I'll make it worth your while. He was a good swerver. Ed was the best. I mean, he was brilliant. He could get you to do, pretty much. He was good.
Right.
He was really brilliant mind in the business. And I said, I don't want it. And so, anyway, he said, okay, don't worry about it. So I didn't hear any more. And so right before I was supposed to go on, I was wrestling Eddie Gilbert's dad, believe it or not.
Tommy?
Yeah, he was still wrestling at that time. And here I am. I'm a young guy coming in and coming out of San Antonio, and I'm supposed to go against him. And then it's the Florida TV title. And right before I go in the ring, Jody and them come by me and say, hey, guess what? Hey, you give him a big backbreaker and you come off of that lover's leap and pin him 1, 2, 3. So that's where my first day in Tampa, I was a Florida TV champion.
Oh.
So that's the way that happened. And, but what happened was, when I say about J.J. Dillon, I really like J.J. I don't have anything against J.J. As far as booking, he had a lot of bad luck. He just had a lot of bad luck. And he learned from one of the great guys, and that was Eddie Graham. But when he would go to a different territory, he had hard luck. I mean, he really did. And it's not that he was a bad booker.
We're going to cut that. Go ahead.
It wasn't that he was a bad booker. It was just that fate wasn't on his side. But anyway, Wahoo McDaniel came in, and we were working down in Miami. And it was me and Wahoo for the TV title. And Jerry and Jack and them wanted me to stay in the territory, even though Jody was leaving. And so that night, JJ had me drop the strap to Wahoo. Well, that's my sign of a guy's being on top, that you really don't need me in this territory. And so when we went to TV the next day, I said, look, I'm going to give you my 2-week notice and I'm out of here. And I said, and Wahoo even told him that night, why in the world are you beating me? This guy just came from drawing all this money, right? And you're beating him already?
Right.
I mean, are you nuts? Well, that's a little difference that I have, my opinion that I have with JJ to this day. And so I have nothing against JJ. He's a great father. He's a great guy. But he had his chances in this business. He had more than most people. He should have a lot of money. And, yes, it's nothing for him to be griping about. He had everything. But when he did that to me, that was kind of like, you know. And then in the later years, when I was in the IWF, he needed, you know, he wanted to come in Orlando and go to the Universal, so I took care of him and his family. I like JJ. I have a lot of respect for JJ. But when that happens, when you change a belt like that, that shows a guy that you're really not interested in him being there. And so the Briscoes tried to talk me out of leaving. But I said, nah, I'm going to go.
What other talent was down there when you were there?
When I was
what
there.
What year is this in Florida?
81.
81.
Who was there? I don't know. I think Jardine was there. Jaggers. Another guy, Randy Tyler.
Okay.
One of them. I don't know who else was that. It was just different guys that was in there. And I can't even remember the baby faces that were in there. But I know I had a lot of matches with Jerry Briscoe. You know, we worked some angles with that.
Right.
And but it was better for me just to move on. So that's where I did.
All right. The big question that you know, we want to ask you, obviously, is the big controversial that happened in '84. How did the entire 2020 piece come about? Let's back it up and talk about what led up to you going on that TV show and going national, exposing the business, so to speak.
Well, it really wasn't exposing the business. It was exposing a situation that went on. And what happened was that Ole Anderson had cornered me in the showers at TBS. And Wahoo McDaniel, it's too bad Wahoo's not living today, and he'd back me up on it. He said, look, he says, me and Barnett want to book you, and we want to take 20% of your money. I said, you're out of your mind.
Book you out to other territories.
Yeah. I said, take 20% of my money, you're out of your mind. Well, and Wahoo looked at him and said, hey, you leave him alone. He's my guy. Right? And he said, well, if he doesn't do this deal, I'll fix him up. He won't work anymore. And I said, well, if you do that, Mr. Ole Anderson, I'm going to go on national television and I'm going to fix you up. And so that's exactly what I did. So what happened was, leading up to the 2020 story, Roy Shire had called me and said what was going on. The Sheik called me. I'm trying to think of the other two guys that called me. Then one of the referees called me, Steve, saying that Ole was trying to pay him $5,000 to plant coke on me, you know, on my car and all that. He was a dirty son of a bitch, that guy. Ole Anderson's no good. God has got even with Ole, not me. God has got even with Ole. But leading up to this, that's where it all started. Okay. And what happened was, when I did my interview, they made me do the other stuff where they would tell the story. And then they lied. They didn't tell the story. They were supposed to interview Ole Anderson. They weren't supposed to interview Vince McMahon. Period. Or David Schultz. You can read that. I told him, if you interview David, he's going to slap the piss out of you. And exactly happened. They weren't supposed to interview David or Vince McMahon. I had nothing against Vince. I do not have anything against Vince McMahon today. Vince McMahon, to me, is what he's accomplished is genius. I mean, he's done, I don't agree with everything he does, but the guy has been a huge success. And how can you knock a guy for being successful? I'm certainly not going to knock a guy for being successful. I had nothing to do with them coming to see Vince nor David. So what happened was they went to see Ole. And so Ole lied and cheated his way and told him, you need to go up there and get Vince McMahon, because he wanted to get back at the Briscoes. If you notice, who was on the tape? Jackie Jerry Briscoe was on the tape with Murdoch. Right?
Right.
I've never watched the whole thing. I only watched clips of it. And I watched that specifically because he tried to nail my friends. And he wanted to get back to the Briscoes for doing that to him. See what I mean?
Yeah. How did you approach 2020? How did that even come about? Like, how did you?
I called him, and I had enough credibility that they wanted to take a look at it. But I said I wanted you to expose a business that's not paying their talent, and they're stealing all the money, and they're blackballing people. And then I had that. And when I say that is laid down by a Superior Court judge in Iowa with all the promoters signing about blackballing wrestlers. They've already admitted they've done it before. So now they're doing it again. So when I went into 2020, we did all the story. And after the story, they were going after David, and I had a fit. I went down and met with all the heads of the ABC and all this. I said, I'll go call another freaking conference and say, you double-crossed me, and you went to Vince, you went to this, you went to that. You're not going to sue David. You're not going to try to take his house. You're not going to do any of that. Here's what you're going to do. If you're going to sue anybody, you're going to sue Vince, because Vince is the one that told him to do it. And you shouldn't be suing Vince because I told you not to interview him. Should have been Ole Anderson. So 2020 really didn't do justice by me at all. And sometimes I'm glad I did it because it showed it put the industry in a huge light. What it did for professional wrestling, and it took professional wrestling out of the seedy kind of look it had to a big national spotlight. And what it did for wrestling to this day, after I did 2020, professional wrestling had the largest grossing year in their history the following year. And so I guess I didn't do that too. I really didn't hurt anything, did I? I just made the guys get paid more money. And I look at myself as a Kurt Flood of pro wrestling. And I freed the slaves, you know. I'm the modern day Abraham Lincoln.
Were you afraid about doing the piece at all?
I wasn't afraid. Afterwards, I got a lot of death threats.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, out of the NWA guys, I got a lot of death threats. Yeah, I certainly did. I had a lot of death threats, and so my deal with 2020 was they could never air that again, and they haven't, as you noticed. And so, but no, I caught a lot of flack. But the reason I caught so much flack is because they didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done. They double crossed me, and that little stupid damn snotty nose Ed Whitmore is the guy who did it. And then see where I have a problem is, and I love Bill Apter, but he was siding with the wrestling magazines and all that and trying to discredit me at the time when he knew everything was the truth.
It's funny because Bill Apter called me a week ago when he found out I was going to sit with you, and he told me that, tell Eddie it wasn't my fault, that it was his boss that kind of blackballed you from the magazines. Did you talk to Bill at all down in
No, I didn't get to talk to Bill at all.
All right.
So what did Bill Apter say?
Bill said tell Eddie that it wasn't his fault for what he did to you in the magazines, and that it was pretty much he blamed it on his boss.
And I find it very strange that here's a guy that knocked me, right? And then he came out a few years later with what kind of magazine?
Oh,
that exposed all the business. So that's kind of like, okay, it's okay. It's bad if Ed did it, but boy, it's okay if I go make the money. If I hadn't put the spotlight on all this, there wouldn't be any shoot interviews. There wouldn't guys be writing books. They wouldn't have been able to make all this ancillary market money that they're doing. But I did it to show and to make promoters pay the guys more money and to help them get some health benefits. That was a whole deal. And you just can't blackball people because you don't like them.
Did you get paid for doing the 2020 piece?
No, I didn't get a dime.
Okay.
I did not get one dime. I reinvented myself. I went and learned television. I was in New York. I went and learned how to produce television. I had learned some in LA, but then I went and I learned how to be a television producer, and I started from the bottom and went right to the top.
Did anyone find out about 2020 before it aired? Did any of the boys find out at all or no?
Yeah, a lot of the boys, some of the boys knew.
Before it aired?
Yeah. Sheik was one of them.
What did he say?
Eddie Farhat. He's the one that sent me the tape with Jerry Oates on it. Jerry Oates, he would always badmouth all the guys.
Right.
You know, he would always talk behind people's back and you know, act like he was this, he was that. Jerry Oates wasn't nothing but a scumbag. And so I said, oh, so he wants to be a star. So I said, hey, Sheiky, I said, send me that tape with me and Oates. And I said, I'm going to put that on 2020. And Sheik told me, stick it up their ass. That's what he told me. Because he knew what they were doing to me. And me and Sheik was very close.
Right.
And that's why I have a lot of.
You would think because of the Sheik's gimmick and, you know, he liked kayfabe, his whole identity and all that that he would be against you going out there and exposing it, but I guess you said he was.
I didn't expose anything.
Well, the blading and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, come on. Bottom line is, if you don't understand the blading or whatever, that wasn't a big deal. You know, that kayfabe killed the boys. What I did made the business bigger than it ever was. I mean, blading didn't mean anything. Meltzer was already talking about that. How many other guys were already talking about it? And what does the people say about the guys working in the office of calling Dave Meltzer? Now, who in the hell is Dave Meltzer to be calling anybody? I mean, giving him finishes, and he's exposing the business way before that. I went on television to get the guys more money. Dave Meltzer hadn't made a damn one wrestler $1. Let's be honest. I went and finished up my career that already had been to help the guys make more money. Hey, if I hadn't done that, it wouldn't be you. You wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. I mean, let's be truthful.
Did you know Jim Wilson
was really happening to the industry, and Vince got it. Vince says, "My God, how am I going to be the best, biggest, and the greatest? I'm going to pay the guys more money. I'm going to give them revenue share from DVDs. I'm going to give them revenue share from merchandise." And that's what I was preaching a long time. And he got it, and he still got it. And that's why he's able, Rob, to do what he's able to do, because he's paying these guys enough money to where they're living pretty darn good now, you know?
Don't you think you should be giving health benefits out to the boys?
Oh, he's not doing that?
No.
Oh, I thought he was. Oh, absolutely. Here's what I came up with, and you'll appreciate this being in the entertainment business. And I came up with this, 27 years ago. I said, being in Los Angeles, right? I said, how come, and I talked to Ron Fuller and all these other guys about it. I said, how come the boys can't join AFTRA? You know, American Federation of Television Artists. Hey, and we pay our dues and where we can get health benefits, where we can get insurance. Why can't we do that? Oh, we're not dealing with no damn union. You're not dealing with a union. The boys will deal with a union. Let us go pay our own. You don't even have to pay pension and wealth. We'll do that. Just let us have the opportunity, because the insurance was so freaking high, you couldn't afford it, man. I mean, who in their right mind is going to insure a professional wrestler? I mean, you can go get stuntman insurance, but it's high.
Right.
You know, I mean, how in the right mind is going to do a professional wrestler?
Going back to the 2020 piece, you had no idea they were going to interview David Schultz, and obviously the outcome was John Stossel getting slapped. What are your thoughts on that whole entire?
He got what I told him he's going to get. It's written in documentation. I told him, I said, if you interview David, he's going to slap the piss out of you.
Was that filmed after your stuff with
that? Was after.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many weeks did they tape?
They shot me. We did ours all in one day.
In one day?
Yeah. And then they were supposed to, they went to the Justice Department because of this. I had a lawyer that screwed me, all right, out of Atlanta. This right here was put down, United States District Court for the Southern District of Iowa, United States of America versus National Wrestling Alliance. And that was signed for blackballing wrestlers. And that was laid down. And back in October 15th, 1956. That's how old this documentation was. And when I found this, my lawyer was an ex for the Justice Department, ex-lawyer. And I threw this at him. I said, how come you didn't do this? Hey, I'm giving you this now. You make sure that they do their job with the Justice Department. There's one thing the 2020 did do. They went and tried to get this done at the Justice Department. They really tried to do that. And I'm going to show you. It's signed by all of them, brother. And you know, when you look at it, every one of them. I mean, at that time, from Frank Tunney, Lubrith, Avery, I mean, it gives you territories. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Orville Brown, Cal Leeton in Los Angeles, Pinky George, Des Moines, Tex Haggard. I mean, it just goes down. Paul Jones in Atlanta, Toots Mott, You know who he is in New York. Jim Crockett, Cola, Barry Light, Mike London, Cowboy Luttrell. That was in Tampa right before Graham. Right? I mean, it just goes all the way down the line. Roy Welch, which is Buddy Fuller. Okay? I mean, it just, and Billy Wolf.
What exactly is this documentary? Because some people might not know. They might not understand.
What this is, it was a complaint filed and argued that it entitled is an act to protect trade and commerce against unlawful restraints and monopolies, commonly known as a Sherman Act, as amended. So it tries to keep a monopoly like the NWA and all this other from becoming monopolies and blackballing guys. That's what this is a final judgment against them. They lost this case. And so when I showed that to my lawyer, he didn't know what to do because he didn't do his job. And so, instead of keep wasting my money going down a bad street, I just went and put myself and said, screw it. I'm going to go find another job. I'm going to go be a television guy. And that's exactly what I did.
Did you ever get into any physical altercations after 2020 at all?
Oh, none. None.
Were you surprised when Harley Race took part, I guess, in another special later that year and he wore a mask?
What I found is that and I helped Harley this fan fest. He was losing his balance, and I went and got a wheelchair where he could go, push that. And I hate to see that. I just told the guy, whatever you do, don't ask him to sit in a wheelchair. Just have him push it. And it's funny that they will say that against me, right? But they don't say that against any of the rest of them. See, that's what the wrestling business is. That's how come the wrestling business could never have a union. It could never have anything. And you didn't go into the Jesse Ventura about how he tried to start a union and Hulk Hogan ratted him out.
Right, man. Yeah, go ahead. You can talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, and we all knew about it, and Hulk Hogan ratted him out. Hulk Hogan's about Hulk Hogan. He's going to rat you out. And, Hulk's fine with me. I have nothing to do with him. He has nothing to do with me. He started down in Pensacola, when we were down there.
Right.
And, but, he kind of turned on David Schultz later on. And he turned on a lot of guys. Turned on Jesse, who later became a governor. But see, instead of really helping the boys in a position he could have, he turned his back on them. And so why should you really care about what happens to Hulk Hogan today? Now, hey, he had a great career. I mean, he did a lot for wrestling. But what did he do for the boys that helped make him the money?
A lot of people say that about Hogan, that he's for himself.
He is. And that's the problem. And, if I had to do it over again, the 2020, Rob, here's what I would do. Knowing the television business like I am now, I would have made sure I was there everywhere that they went with that camera. And I would have made sure that I went to that Ole Anderson interview. He wouldn't have got out of it.
I'm going to ask you some more questions about the actual 2020.
Okay.
Was there anything edited out of the piece that you wish was in there?
Oh, yeah, a lot. The interview with Ole Anderson.
Right.
I mean, he stole them away. And then Bill Apter was trying to, he kind of turned on me. And I'm so disappointed in that because I've only tried to help Bill in every single way when things went bad on him and things, you know what I mean? I've always tried to get things to help him. And now what did he say exactly again? I want to hear that again.
He had asked me, basically he wanted me to tell you that it wasn't him who got you banned from the magazines. It was his boss. And he didn't want you to blame him. I can call him later if you want to talk to him.
No, but that's fine. I don't, and I want you to keep that on this tape.
Yeah.
Because just to let people know that, hey, things happen even with friends.
Right. Actually, one of the questions I'm going to ask you about, do you remember reading the PWI where Stu Sachs wrote a column about you in 2020?
No.
I don't remember exactly what it was. I just remember it was he buried you kind of.
No.
So, okay. Do you think that piece changed the business forever?
Yes. I think it changed it for the best. I really do. When you think about 2020, it changed it in a way. What it did, it made professional wrestling really big again. It had lost its luster. You know what I mean? And so even though something bad, it was something good always comes out of something bad. And it just so happened to be my career that it had to come out of. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. What's done is done. And you can't correct it. I just wish it would have been done right. You know, the son of a bitch has double crossed me. And instead of Ole Anderson should have been the guy sitting there getting drilled, not Vince McMahon. But see, Vince is a smart guy. He doesn't care whether it's bad or good. He's going to take it. And he took it and rolled with it. It's just like he did when he took the money from Jim Crockett. He took that $1 million and went and did WrestleMania with it. And, you know, the rest is kind of history. And so let's deal with 2020.
How did the guys treat you in the locker room after that piece aired?
I never was in the locker room after that until the IWF. And all those guys seemed to love me.
Probably because you were paying them.
Well, and I gave them the opportunity that no one else was doing.
Were you surprised that Vince went, exposed the business for a tax break years later?
Well, I'd always, it was really, I started all this years ago. I always said, why do we, and I still have my wrestling licenses in there, where we used to have to go to each commission and buy a wrestling license to perform. Okay, well, it's like I said, and I'm gonna show this program before we get off the air here in California. Why am I buying these? The boys are always having to pay. Okay, why are we paying for something that's an exhibition? Why are we paying? Why the greatest thing that ever happened was me on 2020, then Vince following, and are you mad at me? I didn't tell you a lie. Did I lie about anything? No, did I? Did I lie?
No, not at all.
Okay, what are you pissed off about? Kayfabe killed the damn business. Kayfabe it was made for the pro wrestlers to keep you stupid, to keep you under their thumb. That's why. Oh, that may kill the business. Can't nothing kill the business. I didn't even try to kill the business. I tried to help the business, and that's exactly what I did. And I'm very proud of it. I should have T-shirts made, Mr. 2020. That's what I ought to do, and have you sell them for me. But I'm very proud of what I did. I'm just really pissed off that they didn't do the story the right way.
I got a couple other questions regarding 2020. A cynic may say that your claims about being screwed by ABC is just a way to take heat off yourself for exposing the business. How do you respond?
A cynic may screwed me. Well, how come they didn't? I had no connections with Vince McMahon whatsoever. The only time I met him was probably 10 years later at Nappy,
Right.
Down in New Orleans. It's a national television program and executives. And I met him with Randy Savage. It had to be 10 or 15 years later. That's the only time I ever met Vince McMahon. Why would I send someone to Vince McMahon? I didn't have the problem with Vince McMahon. I had it with Ole Anderson. And that's who I wanted to deal with. I don't go around Robin's barn to get to where I need to be. I wanted to deal with Ole Anderson.
Right. One last question about 2020. You recently said that you're upset that 2020 called the business fake. Do you think that some people may find that hypocritical with the way you participated in the piece?
No, because they promised me they wouldn't use that word. Because the business is not fake. The business is predetermined, but the business is not fake. It's like I've said before, when you take a suplex off the top rope, or you take a power slam, or you take whatever, it's not fake. But, John Smartass wanted to use that, and because Ed Whitmore kept pushing that. They really wanted to call it wrestling. It's fun, but it's fake. And I had a fit. I wouldn't let him do it. And that's the exact title they wanted to use. And I said, hell no, you're not going to use that title. And so and hypocritical, how am I hypocritical?
Do you regret doing the piece?
I've already told you, I don't regret doing the piece. I regret the way it was done. I just wish that I could have been present to make sure the interview was done with the right people. Far as regret doing the piece, why would I? Why would I regret? Because that was the biggest. After that, it was the biggest year in the history of pro wrestling, and the guys started making more money than they've ever made because I shined the light on it, and it made it happen. No, I'm not ashamed, and I'm not ashamed of it. The only thing that I hate that it wasn't done, it wasn't interviewed. Vince, I have nothing against Vince. I never worked for Vince, so I have nothing to say bad about Vince. It should have been Ole Anderson. That's the guy. But he was the best at always sending people to somebody else saying, oh, it's not me. I never did anything. Oh, my God. You know, and that's what he did to those guys. He sent them right to Vince. He said, Vince is the one that's doing all that, killing the business, treating the guys that way. It never would happen here. Oh, hell, man, please. He was the factor of the 2020 piece.
Did Ole ever try to contact you at all after that?
Ole Anderson, no, ever. Jim Barnett did, though.
All right.
And I understand that Ole Anderson even slammed Barnett. I know I would never read his book, but I heard from some guy that publishes his book said he even slammed Barnett in his book. He went for Barnett, he'd never made a dime. So you see what I mean? So when you start looking at where the fingers are pointed, there's always three pointed back at you.
A little bit ago, we were talking about kayfabe. When do you think kayfabe officially died?
Oh, when Dave Meltzer started doing his sheets.
So you're not a fan of the dirt sheets?
You know, I like Dave. I like Dave Meltzer. What I think is a problem is the rag sheets are you giving away finishes ahead of time, all this other stuff. That really kills the business.
I agree, especially the internet too.
Yeah, I mean that kills the business. I mean, you want to talk about killing the business? I never did that. I mean, but you got dumbasses in the offices calling this guy, and why I don't know, just to have their name in the in a dirt sheet. I'm like I can't get over this. That's what bugs me.
I guess we'll talk about the IWF next. How did you start the IWF?
Well, I came from New York. I was in New York. And I lived on Madison Avenue between 68th and 69th. And so I had an idea. I said, I just so happened I was watching the grand opening of Universal Studios when Steven Spielberg and some of the other guys were cutting the red ribbon. I said, man, I got a damn idea that may just work. You know, even though the business is in kind of like a lull right now, and that's what was really the problem. The WWE wasn't drawing. The WCW wasn't drawing nothing. And I said, let me go in and see if I can cut a deal and go soundstage this thing, and where I'll have a true international audience. At each taping, I'll have unlike TNA, who copied me, the IWF had 5 fresh new audiences each time we taped. I'd shoot 5 shows a day. And we'd unload and load in, unload and load in. And I'm not going to tell them how to get them in there. It ain't none of my business. But talk about Jimmy Hart. He's the one that got them in on my back. See, I did the XWF there, and I got him in there. So he did the old Memphis screw on me behind, you know, talking to Pam Warren and all that to get them in. And they were desperate for business. So, you know, hey, that's good. Let them use it. Because they still don't know what they're doing.
Someone accused you of blowing a lot of money on IWF. Do you agree or no?
Blowing a lot of money? Who would accuse me of blowing a lot of money unless it was my own money? What I did do, I believed in a product, and that product, I set the stone. What I did with a question like that, here's the way you handle a question like that. No, I didn't blow a lot of money. No, I didn't. We were syndicated in 90% of the country. we had everybody scared. Kevin Sullivan told me that those friggin' guys in Atlanta and New York were scared to death because I had Universal, I had a sound stage, I had fresh audiences every single taping. Not just one fresh audience. I had to load them in. They had 20 minutes to load them in and out in between shows, right? Okay, I was selling merchandise there. I had a theme park, man. You know, I was there. And I had the whole thing set up. But we just didn't have enough funding, you know, to keep it going in that bottom period.
Right.
Well, I mean, when the guys that came out of there, like Rob Van Dam, you know, you had Blackjack Mulligan there. Vince McMahon stole 2 gimmicks from me. One was a Repo Man, and the other one was the Smoking Guns, which I call them the Long Riders.
Right.
So I had a lot of good talent that came out of there. And when do you say you lost money? That would be kind of like saying, okay, Rob, did you lose money doing the Ring of Honor? And I know your answer would be no, because you believed in what you were doing, and it showed. See, I stopped the IWF because I got tired of it. I got tired of the BS, and the business stayed in a lull and never came out. And some of the guys, and I did all young guys, which I would never do again. I should have mixed more veterans in. You know, I brought Blackjack in. I love Jack to death, and he's had health problems lately. But Blackjack, I love to death. And, you know, I had the Stomper, Neil Stewart. You know, his son is Boo Boo Stewart in Twilight.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he's been in over 40-something movies, you know. And, I mean, I had a lot of good talent. We had great talent there. I trained Kevin Kelly. The ring
announcer, right?
Yeah, his real name's Kevin Foote, but it was his Kevin Kelly. But he does have a tendency to stick his foot in his mouth, and that's what happened to him at the WWF. I told him not to ever do that. Just go up there and get your money and go home. But he's a good announcer, and Kevin, I really think the world of. I think he'll do a great job for whoever he does work for.
I think he's working for Ring of Honor now, actually.
Yeah, your ex-company,
yeah.
But he'll do a good job for him. He really will.
Go ahead, what were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Do you still keep in touch with a lot of the guys from the company?
Just a few, really, because, you know, I went in TV full time. And so, you know, it's like my brother-in-law, he's partners with Michael Bay and Bruckheimer. And, you know, one of his movies was Coyote Ugly. And, you know what Bay's done. I mean,
right.
You know, and you know what Bruckheimer does. I mean, me, compared to the 4,000 hours of television I've done, is poorly. I'm the poorly member of the family. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm proud of what I've done. I've done a lot of great series that's done real well. But when you look at it, I want to get one more run out of wrestling. I really want to finish what I started with the IWF, and I think I can do it, and I am going to do it, and I'll close that deal tomorrow, and don't mean to date your product, but it will happen, and I just want to I just want to get one more run in, and do it the right way, and because it can be done the right way,
without a doubt.
Yeah, and everybody can be happy, and that's all I want. I want to prove without a shadow of a doubt that it can be done right, and I almost had that done before. But I just couldn't get that. You know, the business just wouldn't come up. And so that's what happened.
What do you miss most about the business?
What I miss about the business is guys like you. And I have a lot of people that call me all the time. You know, from Marty Jannetty to from guys. I'm trying to get in touch with Blackjack now. I want to see about his health and make sure. I mean, I just have so many guys that call me and they ask me for my wisdom. You know, I said, well, hell, man, what do you want my wisdom for? I don't want to give you my wisdom because I may need it later on. But, you know, it's like one of the gimmicks that Mick Foley used, that they got that from me. Remember when he came up from underneath the canvas and it opened up?
Right.
Well, that was my idea. And because I gave it to Marty Jannetty, and Marty Jannetty gave it to him. So anyway, and that's another guy I like that has a lot of talent, Marty Jannetty. Boy, the stories he's got to tell too.
You did 2 with him.
Did you do 2 with him?
Yeah.
So he's something else.
What are your thoughts on Flair and Hogan's involvement in today's wrestling?
I think that time has passed them by. I think that they have become an embarrassment to themselves as well as the company. I think that if you're going to utilize an individual like a Hogan or Flair, I think it needs to be done more in a commissioner's position or something that has no contact to it. You know what I mean? They don't need to be the center of the
totally
company.
Agree.
It's like I said earlier. Look, you don't need to write yourself in the main event every single night because you're the stinking booker.
I don't know if you watch MMA at all, UFC. Are you a fan or?
Who, White?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I like UFC's good. I like that. Yeah.
Do you think it's a work or you think it's a shoot?
Here's the way. I'm gonna tell you something an old timer told me. So I'm gonna pass my buck on this. An old timer always told me this. He goes, Eddie, never forget this. If there's professional involved and there's money involved,
right,
it could be a work.
What are your thoughts on comparing the two, UFC and pro wrestling? And do you think UFC's hurt the business?
Oh no. The business, you can't hurt the business. The business has hurt itself with lousy booking, lousy talent. Wrestling has hurt itself. There's no reason for wrestling not to be selling out, everywhere. There's no if as what's going to happen to UFC, in my opinion. You can take it for what it's worth. Is the problem they're going to run into is they're going to run out of talent because it is such a tough sport and it's so grueling on these guys that before long they're not going to have any more bodies to beat up. That's the problem, and that's when I think that's when you're going to see the decline of it because you're going to absolutely run out of talent. You better get busy and start training a whole bunch of guys because, hey, you can't take so many of those shots.
Would you ever want to write a book?
I was offered $1 million to write a book when I did 2020, but they wanted me to expose. It's like you asked me about road trips and stuff, and I just won't talk about it. They wanted me to talk about what happened in the locker room, what happened, And here's what I believe, and I didn't do 2020 to hurt professional wrestlers. I did it to help wrestlers get more money, to be able to afford better things and to eat better and have their family to have better educations and being able to send their kids to college and like every other red-blooded American. And when you look at the way things are done, it's just sad. I mean, that's all you can say. It is sad, isn't it?
Without a doubt. Looking back on your career, favorite guys to work with?
Oh, man. I had a bunch of them. Jerry Briscoe was one of my favorite guys to work with. Scott Casey was great to work with. Oh, my goodness. Boy, Wahoo was great to work with. Chavo Guerrero was good to work with. Even old Squealy, I call him Squealy, Mil Mastras. He was all right. Let me see who else was a good guy to work with. Terry and Dory. But I got to work with them because most of the time they were heels and I was heels. And but we sold out Amarillo on Christmas Day. It's the worst time I ever spent in my life. I'll never forget Christmas Day that day.
Right.
They had a big show on Christmas Day, in Amarillo, Texas. And Tank Patton, remember Tank Patton?
I was going to ask you about him, actually.
Yeah, Tank Patton
Did you team with him?
Huh?
Did you team with him? Or just
Well,
work?
what we did is they just put us together to go against the Funks in Amarillo that night, and Jardine was with I think he worked against Murdoch that night. Anyway, problem was we couldn't get out. You know, there was no airlines. Everything had shut down. So we went, and you know, kayfabe was such a big thing back then. So we were at this hotel. And I'll never forget this. Me and Don Jardine went and got all the chains that woman had, and we drank soda and ate candy bars. Oh, and we had like a 5:30 plane to get out of there, man. And it couldn't come quick enough. And it was cold and snowy and all that. I'll never forget that. December the 25th. Ah, my goodness gracious. That was the worst day I ever had in Amarillo. And Amarillo had a lot of great wrestling fans too, you know.
You worked for Vern Gagne too for a little bit, right?
I just did a couple shots with Vern, not much.
Any interaction with him as a promoter, or not really?
No.
Okay.
I know his son-in-law Larry Zbyszko.
Right.
And I understand that Vern's not doing real well now, and that's sad.
Yeah. I guess your least favorite guys to work with.
The least? Oh man, that's hard to say. There were so damn many of them. I mean, God, I don't even know where to start there. That's just a loaded question.
Okay. Favorite rib?
Favorite rib? I'll tell you a good rib we did. This is a good clean rib, so I'm gonna tell it. You know, I know you probably got all kind of stuff, but this was in Tampa. You ever heard of Chick Donovan?
Yes.
You know, he always was wanting to pose and look at his body. So, and he was, and Jody Hamilton was booking in Tampa at the time. So what we did is we switched, and me and Jerry Briscoe went on ahead of him and whoever. We made them, they made them go like 35, 40 minutes. So what I did is I came back in a hurry, and he had his shoes right on the floor, right on the tile. And so what happened was I had super glue. Right. And so we were in there playing cribbage and all that. So I said, hey, bring it in here where I can stand on these things. And so I stood on those shoes like for 20 minutes, you know, where they wouldn't move.
Right.
Because my feet fit, you know, his was the same size shoes. So I stood there on there. Then finally I jumped in and got a shower, right? Came back and cleaned up everything. And so we were in the next room when Chick came out of his match and he got his shower. We were waiting. We had to see this, right? So he was always posing, you know, he's looking at the mirror, all my big muscles and all this. So he goes like this. You know, he put his socks on, he's getting ready to go. He goes like this. You know, the shoe didn't move. And he goes, again, the shoe didn't move. Finally, he's got both hands just like that, trying to get the shoe up, right? And it's on there.
Right.
So me and Jody and everybody was running out. Hey, Chick, have a nice night, right? And I super glued his shoes to the floor. And what he finally had to do was just cut up all of the whole square tile to take it with him.
That's awesome.
Then another time, me and David Schultz, Fuji was really bad about locking bags. You probably heard this. So he had got me and Schultz one night. So, and I'll tell you another story too while I'm on Fuji. So Fuji and we were wrestling Maryville outside of Knoxville. And so they were on last. So me and Schultz says, okay, as soon as they get in the ring, because we'd stopped and got locks. So we got like 14 chairs and put them together and locked his bag on there, right? And so we went out behind there and waited till he got out. And he couldn't get in his bag because we locked it up, right? And he was cussing. He had a red Cadillac at the time. He was cussing up a storm. And so you saw him take all them 14 chairs, right? Throw them in the back of his friggin' Cadillac and shut the door and drove off. And me and David were dying laughing. I mean, that was really, that's the way you get, that's good ribs back then.
Right.
All right, then the next one is, so we were running 2 towns. And so me and David were in another town. Anyway, he invited some of the other guys over to eat. So he threw a big spread out
That's
for
the
him.
funny story?
That's a dog story.
Yeah.
It's a real story. So anyway, this dog had been barking and bottling for weeks. So finally, anyway, he served up the meal and everything. And he says, oh, how y'all look at this? Is this good? Oh, and he takes a bag out and rolls a dog's head out right on the floor.
I heard that one.
Thank God. That's a true story.
It's crazy.
I was in Knoxville when he did that. Thank God I was booked in another town. It was really good. So,
is there anything you want to say to your fans out there that you might not have ever had a chance to say to before?
well, you know what I wanted you guys to know? I never came out and I never said anything. And I appreciate you guys supporting me all those years. And here's what I'd like for you to understand this. Is that Eddy Mansfield didn't try to kill the business, nor was I a grumbled ex-professional wrestler. What I did to help the business, and I did, and I would do it again. I'll do it just a little bit better, though. And for all the people that put me down and say what they want to say, and some of the wrestlers can say that too, but each one of them are getting paid to do a shoot interview. They're getting paid to do a book, and they're getting up paid to do all this other, which without me, that had never happened. So in essence, I've helped the business evolve into where these guys are making money now and not like it used to be. And you know something? I didn't sit around and cry about spilled milk very long. I went and became a very successful television producer, and I'm very proud of that. But as far as wrestling, I miss wrestling. I missed you guys. It was great to see you when I'm out. And all my blessings are with you. And thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here today. It was a great interview.
You got it, man.